Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Dr. Dia Berger. She has 28 years experience as a medical director. She is a medical director for over 50 med spas and is a specialist injector. Welcome to the show, Dr. Dia.
Ajay, thank you very much for having me. I'm very much looking forward to it.
You are welcome to the show, Dr. Dia. You are welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk about. We'll try and understand from you the business of med spas. You are the medical director for over 50 med spas. So, Dr. Dia, help us understand what is this med spa. I don't know much about spas, but in India, I've heard about spas. But med spa is a new word for me. And there is a doctor also involved there. So I want to understand it for a common person sitting in a village or for a small business who wants to look at it from a business point of view, what exactly these med spas are.
Okay, so med spas are, by the name, saying that there's a doctor involved, which means it is a spa that can do more invasive things. We can use stronger lasers, we can set them stronger. We can do, the basis is usually injecting dermal fillers, changing the face a little bit, injecting Botox to take frowns away. So you have to have a doctor there when we start breaking the skin and doing things to the human body that can potentially harm them. It's a good idea that it's based on a doctor. And in North America, but I mean, I've been looking at India and the rest of the world because I've got an academy where I'm training people to do this. The basis has to be a medical doctor. And we add nurses definitely to help with that. But in order to protect the public, there has to be a doctor. So it's not necessarily a spa where you do manicures and pedicures. It's spas where we do more aggressive things, which means it has more aggressive results as well, which is great.
Right, Dr. Dia. Let me understand it from a common person's perspective. Botox, people have heard.
Yes.
They have heard about Botox that film stars use it. A lot of people who want to look younger, they use it. That's the general perception. My understanding is it can be also, used in beyond perhaps, just to look beautiful or to keep young. Maybe if I'm wrong, correct me on that. So that part is there. So how should a common person understand that this is also related to this? And obviously there is a cosmetic need people have in different lines.
Yes.
But nowadays I see that there is a lot of talk about younger people also who should be eating better quality of food, more water, and all those things. They also look at understanding these things for for themselves, just like weight loss. A lot of talk is now on pills, that you take pills and it will decrease your weight, rather than you getting up in the morning and doing exercise. So I want to understand from that point of view, what is it, who is this needed for? Is it only about cosmetic stuff, or is it also about really when you need a med spa in one's life? Help us understand from both the points of view.
Okay, that's a wide question, Ajay. It's a good question. So the history of Botox specifically, and I mean, Botox is a trademark product made by Allergan, and it was the first one. We call the group neuromodulators. And originally it was applied for people with a lazy eye, for example, or if we have someone who is a spastic quadriplegic, right? They can't walk and their legs are spastic, so the legs squeeze together, but the person needs to be diapered because they're incontinent. So they used Botox there, for example, with the eye, to relax the muscle that pulls the eye in, relax that so the eye pulls straight. or with a person who is a paraplegic to inject some of the muscles in the legs, because you and I won't be able to force someone's legs open every time we have to change a diaper if it's a grown up. So that's where it came from originally. And then a lady doctor in Canada actually found that the eye of the patient with a lazy eye that she injected also stopped having wrinkles around the eye. And being a woman, of course, she went, aha, and took it further. So, what we do with Botox cosmetically is very, very low dose compared to when we use it medically. The cosmetic stuff is tiny doses, and you can literally make the person's face do what they want. I have people who come in and they say, I look like I'm frowning all the time. Can you make it smoother? Or they find their eyes hang down, right? And they look tired, or they look angry or sad, and it's affecting work. So we use Botox to relax some of the muscles, and we use filler to put fat pads literally back in position, which lift things up. So the idea cosmetically is I see it as makeup, right? We don't want to look like we're on stage with makeup day to day. We want to look better, softer, little friendlier, not frowny. So the idea is just to make subtle changes. In the same breath, on faces, I have a large group of clients, patients, people, for example, who have had Bell's palsy multiple times, where one half of the face is paralyzed from a virus, and they heal up, but the face isn't straight anymore. One side is lower than the other. And I use Botox and filler to get her face looking symmetrical again, which means, yes, it is for cosmetics, but her original problem was medical. So you can adapt it everywhere. Now, getting to young people, I got into this in the early 2000s when it really started taking off as a cosmetic procedure. And the people we started dealing with would be in their 60s, and then in their 50s, and then in their 40s. But there is a movement amongst young people, 20s, 30s, who come in and they want prevention. And they are actually very smart, because if their face is smooth, you can tweak her brow and open it a little bit or make a tiny change with a tiny little bit of Botox or filler. And of course, a lot of them want a little bit bigger lips. And I think when you do this, it's very, very important to pay attention to the person's face, right? If you put 10 of us next to each other, you can't give everyone the exact same size mouth. Half of us will look silly. So you have to be able to analyze how strong is her face, how tiny is she, things like that, and decide how you change her, because we're changing millimeters, not centimeters. With the young people, they need very little, and I tell them they are doing prevention. Whereas as we get older and people show up in their 50s and 60s, which is most of my clientele, it doesn't mean you can't help them, but it takes more and it takes a little longer to reverse those signs of aging. So the younger people are way more savvy, informed, aware of this, and they show up earlier. But this is changing facial structures here and there. They still have to do decent skincare and exercise and all those good life things for the rest of their health. I'm literally just doing a semi-permanent paint job with needles.
Okay. Okay. So a lot of times when there is a change in face, I see people discussing that Botox has something related to Botox has gone wrong. And people see it in their own way. So I want to understand, can these procedures go wrong? Secondly, what are the side effects? It's good to start young, thinking about your being not aging quickly, but also it's good to see the side effects part as early as possible before you go for these procedures.
I agree with you. Our biggest problem is in the industry right now, doctors and nurses coming from university on one end and medi-spas or spas on the other side. There's a gap in the middle. We don't learn how to do cosmetic Botox or dermal fillers or how to fill a lip in university and medical school. So the people who are interested in this have to go learn it after and on their own time, which means they travel across the world. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of money. There are good places out there to teach, and there are horrible places out there to teach, but there's no standardization. So one of the things that I am doing and I've been working towards is I'm starting an academy to teach injectors how to inject, to teach staff how to do the high-end medical services, and I teach them a business model. Because we find there is an injector somewhere in a room, he's got extra time or an extra room, and he injects by himself. It's not the ideal way to do it from a business perspective. The other side is people get their skill set at a wide variety of places, and unfortunately, not always good. So my goal, and I'm at this point seeing it as a life calling, is to change the face of this industry, because people shouldn't look like blown up balloons. They shouldn't have lips that look like a fish. They shouldn't have these tiny little eyes. If you walk past the people that I inject in the street, Jay, you and other people will look at them and go, oh, she looks beautiful. But you won't think for a second she had injections done. The moment the person looks injected, the injector missed the point, right? We're supposed to work with nature here and just make small changes and not turn people into freaks. Getting to side effects, Botox luckily is very short. If you put Botox in the wrong place, you will get the wrong muscle relaxing and you might find an eye drops down or their smile is a little crooked. But within a few weeks or a few months, that Botox is completely gone. Our body breaks it down. At the longest 6 months, there's no Botox left. For people who start new, it's about 3 months, which means that skewy look or the effect they didn't want is completely gone. Filler isn't permanent either, but filler injected in the wrong place, there are danger zones. And I mean, I'm trained as a surgeon, which means I dissected a cadaver for a year through my training in med school in order to become a surgeon. So my anatomy knowledge is very, very high. So I know there are places you will not put a needle in someone's face, whereas there's a huge group of people just taking needles and injecting, and it's quite dangerous because with filler, they can make the filler act like a clot, and we can have certain blood vessels block, and then you have a piece of tissue that doesn't get blood flow, and I mean, that is catastrophe. So something that's supposed to make us look a little prettier shouldn't turn into something that negatively affects our life permanently. So in that instance, training is very, very important. And I would tell people going to an injector, ask for photographs. And the other thing, believe it or not, look at the injector themselves. I have had that. I've run into this in quite a few cases lately where the person has huge credentials and I look at their face and I'm thinking, oh my God, what have you done to your face? Right? It's injected in all the wrong places, which means that injector shows you their face as their model of work. So it's kind of common sense. I would ask for pictures. I would, and they should have lots of pictures to show you, and look at the injectors themselves.
Right, right, Dr. Dia. Thank you for that information. Now, so does that mean, see, you are a specialist injector. So does it mean, or should we understand that the success of such a thing depends on the quality of the injector? And because you have got that training, you have got this working with a cadaver for a year, you got that specialist training. Does it mean that the outcome will also depend on a simple doctor, simple MBBS as we call in India, or it will need a person who has got some experience or quite better experience in terms of surgeon? How does that work? How does a person who is going for, because see, uh, a lot of stories are there which have not so gone so good.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, when you walk on the street, people will see what a beautiful face. Then there have been stories when you walk on the street, people say, what a face after Botox. So I want to understand, And it is not just in India, even outside,
Oh,
people
yeah.
have gone and sued companies. So I want to understand, in that backdrop, where is the success more dependent on? Is it the injector, or is it the type of medicine, the quantity of medicine? And also, if it can wean off after a few months, does it mean you got to take it again and again? Because in the first 3 months, your eyes will look good, but maybe in the next 3 months, again you take it and your eyes will look very different. So the person will think, outside person might think, this person is a new person every 3 months. I want to understand that aspect.
Ajay, you're funny. I love it. Okay. So let me start with your last part first. So the changes we do are not so dramatic that the person looks like one person and then completely different, and one person completely different. So usually if I inject someone for the first time with Botox, I get them back at 3 months and you do it again. And at 3 months, she doesn't fully have, or he doesn't fully have the motion back, but you're keeping it looking the same way. Then their next appointment might be 4 months, and then it might be 5 months, and then it might be 6 months. So as we get those muscles not to contract and not to be so strong, it is the same as cutting a bodybuilder off from his gym access. He's just not able to work out every day. So the muscles aren't that strong. So the stuff we inject, the Botox and the filler, will last longer. And I put my clients on a very specific maintenance program that they don't change so much before we inject them again. In other words, they start noticing it's slowly going back, then we put it back, right? We inject it back. So they keep looking kind of the same way. The good thing with all of this, the Botox and the filler, is the longer they do it, the longer it lasts. So it needs less and less and less to maintain them. So we luckily don't have that. Now she looks like Susan and tomorrow she looks like Mary, right?
Right.
Getting to what makes a good injector. I'm going to tell you it is not a surgical degree, unfortunately. I have one, but we're not doing surgery. Where the surgical degree helps is understanding anatomy, right? The people who inject have to be very, very aware of the anatomy of the face. I mean, I place Botox in the brow. 1 or 2 millimeters either way is the difference between a brow that looks fantastic and the one that doesn't. So the surgical and the original training is more giving the person a good basis. More important than that is someone with, I call it with the eye. You have to have an eye to be able to look at someone's face. And once you have the basics trained to you to be able to go, it needs that, that, and I can take this person's face from point A to point B to point C to point D. And I have trained injectors where unfortunately you realize by the second day, it doesn't matter how many times you point things out, they can't see it. And if the injector cannot see it on the client's face, they're never going to see it on the client's face when I'm not there. So it is not someone who should become an injector. There's a lot of people who chase the money, right? They want to get into this because there's a lot of money, but they don't have an artistic eye, because this is very much combining medicine, physics, and art to be able to be good at it. I find the people who are good have a natural knack for it. They have the right training. They keep learning, and they surround themselves with people who do this very well. And we exchange ideas and we learn from each other. But there's a huge amount of fear and ego, I find, on the side of injectors. The fear and shame to ask for help, right? They think, if I ask for help, it will make me a failure. The opposite is true. Not asking for help makes you a danger, right? And then there's ego. There's a lot of people who go, I'm a doctor, I can inject. I'm a nurse, I can inject. And I'm like, just because you have the original training and you pick up a syringe doesn't mean you should do it. And that makes it really hard for the public, right? Kind of back to your previous question. So the public have to look at those people's work. You want to be able to look at photographs of what they've done to go, I like how you change people's faces or how you do it, and go, I'd like for you to do my face. And stay away from the ones, it's not always the ones with the big credentials who are the better ones.
Right, right, Dr. Dia. So let me understand a bit about, when we talked about the side effects in terms of, as you call it, contraindications. People, does everyone do this? How do they know about the medical history of all patients? It will all depend on verbally what they are saying. Are there ways or are there situations where, in spite of the patient at that point in time, or the one who wants a change to their face, in spite of them informing every bit of thing, still something can be left out? So what are the questions should an injector generally ask? Second thing, a lot of the world has gone through, COVID. Some people have actually, been impacted with COVID. A lot of people have taken vaccines. Are there any indications of such treatment impacting patients who are suffering from long COVID? Because the data is still yet to come. How should people look at this point? Both the things, in terms of the questions being asked by injectors, and secondly, related to COVID, long COVID, or the vaccination part itself.
Okay, Ajay, excellent question. Thank you. So when it is a medi spa, going way back to your first question, when we operate a spa medically, we literally operate it like a medical clinic. So in the town where I used to live, we owned the building, my husband and I. He's a GP surgeon as well, and half the building was medical clinic, sick people coming in, and the other half I had a med spa. But the operation of the two places from the perspective of a clinic is exactly the same, which means people come in, even if they're in for a pedicure, they do what we call an intake sheet, which is the exact same intake sheet you would fill in at your doctor's office. Name, address, healthcare number, which we don't usually use at the spa. Diseases, medications, allergies, right? All of those things. It's a 2-page questionnaire. And then you take a history, right? The same as you would with a patient. And some of the questions that are on my questionnaire is autoimmune diseases. People with autoimmune diseases, I am quite careful with injecting them with filler. Their immune system is malfunctioning, and they sometimes do strange things with different fillers. And getting back to specialist injector, there's a huge spectrum of different kinds of fillers out there. And people's tissue, the human tissue, responds differently to different fillers. So if I have people with certain autoimmune diseases, there are certain fillers that I won't use on them because there's a little bit of a risk that they will swell up, go red, and you get a strange reaction, right? You can manage it. There's nothing we do here can't be managed, but I'm trying to avoid that for me and the client. Botox, usually not a problem. There's 2 contraindications, well, cancer, and there's a specific thyroid condition. It's not the usual up-down thyroid. There's a specific one that we don't use Botox in, and that's about it. Getting to your COVID question, with COVID vaccines, we do get a flare in the immune response, and a healthy person's immune system being exposed to anything from the outside, right? And in COVID's case, we're using part of a dead vaccine, right? It's not a live vaccine. It's just a tiny little piece of COVID. You show the body to go, go make antibodies against this guy. But the immune response is huge, right? People get a fever, they go hot. I remember my first COVID vaccine, headaches, right? You get a mini, what we call a viremia, a little bit of a virus response in the body. And it's good news because it tells you your immune system is working like it should. It's protecting you. After people have had a COVID vaccine, I don't inject them for 6 weeks. Literally, because their immune system is hyper now, I'm not going to go introduce something, but I will inject them 7, 8 weeks later. So we just time that. So in other words, you let their body do its good thing with a vaccine, COVID specifically. I find that sometimes with the the chickenpox vaccine as well, which is a live virus, but the body also shows a bit of a reaction. And I always tell the patient, be happy, right? That reaction tells you your body is healthy, it is doing what it should. But this is not a good time for us to introduce something else. So I just time it. But there is no reason for them not to get it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, indeed. And what about people who may be having long COVID, but they don't know about it? Their system is in one way or the other. Some body parts might have been impacted. Can Botox or any fillers be negative for them? What does your present data talk about? Because this data will only come in the future, not present.
Exactly, exactly. The Botox, I'm not worried about. It's there's no correlation between that and COVID. To give you an idea, someone who had a response to COVID and filler was me, which was quite interesting. And I I like to look at the silver lining of things in life. It happened, and I'm like, ha, good to know, good to work through it. It helps you explain it to patients better. When I got COVID in February 2020, because I was on a trip with 34 teenagers to Quebec, and we definitely had COVID. And then we were waiting for the vaccine in North America, and I actually got a second strain in April, literally 3 days before I was able to get my first vaccine. And then I popped the vaccine about 2 weeks later because we had to work, right? It's no work, no pay. And I mean, you remember the world then, everything was so scary and so chaotic. And I had done lip filler probably a year before. And I didn't get anything with COVID 1. I didn't get anything with COVID 2. I think the second one I had was the British variant. The moment I got the COVID vaccine, my one lip swelled up. And it was minor. It was almost like I had my lip filler done 2 days ago. You know, when we inject people's mouth, it's very vascular. That's why when we punch someone in the mouth, they swell up so badly, right? So it felt more like I had filler done the last 2 days, and I took an antihistamine and an anti-inflammatory for 2 days, and it was gone. But it was interesting because the plastic surgeon in the town that I lived in, very good relationship, and he and I were actually talking about it, and I sent him a picture of my mouth, and I said, look, right, here it is. But the for us in the industry, the good news is it isn't a contraindication. It doesn't mean that person can't have it. It is very easy to manage it for them. And it's more a case of make them aware of it, that they tell you if something happens so you can help them through it, right? It's like anything in life. You know, you go get your tires inflated, and that's where the little peg doesn't pop out and you get a flat tire, right? It's kind of, sometimes we do things and it triggers another thing, but it's not necessarily a problem either way. Just deal with it.
Right, right, Dr. Dia. One more question on this. One is that whatever the reasons, things don't go well as planned, and your face looks different or the way you anticipated. What are the options for a person like this? Obviously, you are disheartened, your face is looking different. The doctor or the clinic or meds, whoever, whichever it is, they will say, we'll make it right. You have lost that trust. Also, your face is not looking for you are not confident of going out. What are the options, what they can do, what is the best way for them to make sure that they are in the better shape earlier, or like earlier on? Should they wait for Botox to wean off, or should they and then look at another option? What should a person do in that confusing state of affairs or mind?
You got it. Um, I I do specific methods in my spa, and I've done it for years, which is a huge part of what I train injectors and spa owners as well. Because if you don't just rush in and stick needles in people's faces and jump on them and do these super dramatic things, then you don't need to deal with these super dramatic side effects and unhappy people. I approach them slowly. we have a very long consult as a first consult. I really figure out what a J wants, right? Because it's not the same what the next man wants and the next man. So just because you come in and you're 50, right? I don't assume this is what I'm going to do with you. I find out how much motion do you want left? How smooth do you want your forehead? How open do you, right? So you and I have a long discussion. What exactly do you want, right? And I make sure I understand it. We talk through it again. We talk price, right? We do photographs, and I inject people not super dramatically the first visit, especially people who have never done it. I ease them into it. I do a little bit of a change and I get them back. I want them to go home, see that little change, look in the mirror and go, I love this. I love how I look. I want more, right? Then they come back and then I start digging deeper into it. And I find that way you build a trust relationship, which is very, very important because we're talking about years. I have clients that have been my clients for 18 years. They drive 6 hours one way to see me, right? Because there's a bond. They know I will give them what they need and what they want. They know when I'm done injecting them, they don't look funny. They don't need to worry. And they look in the mirror and they love it. So to me, it is building a relationship, having. So what I'm saying to you is there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen before, and then you don't need to go clean up after, right? It is very, very, very rare for me to get someone who comes back and they're unhappy. You get people who go, there was a little bruise. But I mean, we talked about that before we started, and it's a needle. I can't kiss it into the skin. I have to stick it in there with a needle, right? So we've covered all of those things. And sometimes it's a case of they go, can you do a little bit more here? So I find mine is usually I add a little bit for them. I'd rather have them go and come back and say, almost a little bit more than to go too much, right? I don't like that undo. And our face is a very personal thing, right? I mean, if you have a pimple or, right? I mean, I play squash and once in a while you get a blue eye. I mean, you're so self-conscious of something on your face not right. And I try to be very aware and respectful for that on someone else's face. And I find that way you don't need to clean up. But let's say things did go wrong. With Botox, my clients also know if anything happens, I give them an aftercare sheet and I talk to them. There's quite a bit of talking before they leave that I tell them what to do, what to expect, what not to do. And we give them that in a typed form as well to phone us. And I get them in immediately if there's something bugging them because I don't know what she's saying, how it looks. I have to say, lay eyes on her or him. With Botox, we tell people you have to give it 2 weeks for full effect. So if I have someone who shows up by day 7 and they say, my eyes aren't quite equal, I'm going to tell them you need to give us 14 days. They could have more muscles in one side than the other, and the one side is reacting a little faster. So by 2 weeks, we'll know. And if you need to adjust with 1 or 2 units, we do that. With filler, there is an enzyme we use. The molecule hyaluronic acid is a natural molecule to the skin. We carry it in skin in our joint spaces. The hyaluronic acid is a sugar crystal that holds water, so it plumps up tissue inside the joints, everywhere else. And as we get older, we lose it. So when you're 25, you've lost 25%. When you're 40, you've lost 40%. So as we get older, we lose the hyaluronic acid, and we literally inject it back in very strategic places and strategic volumes. But there is an enzyme that will actually dissolve the man-made one. So you won't dissolve their natural hyaluronic acid, but you can go inject it into filler that's in the wrong place. And I have to do it quite often. I get people who are injected by other injectors, and the filler sits completely in the wrong places. So the first thing we do is we put enzyme in there and dissolve the filler that's in the wrong place. Give them 3-4 days when the enzymes stop working and get them back, and then start over. So Botox, you have to tweak, right? For example, if something's a little skewy here, sometimes I'll go add another unit on the other side just to balance it out, because our eye sees asymmetry, right? So in other words, you just go get it symmetrical and make a note about next time. Or if Botox is really, really, really bad, I will try, and I've had people come in and they've got a droopy brow. I will try and lift that brow for them a little bit. So while they're waiting for the incorrectly placed medicine to work out, at least they're looking more symmetrical. And filler, you can dissolve and start over. But I find
Right.
people, surprisingly, people are not upset because there's a relationship. I mean, I've got a friend, he's a very, very good injector. And we were talking about a case he had a little while ago because we work with the human body and we are doing invasive things, there is a chance of things going wrong even when we do it safely. And he had someone with quite a severe side effect. And I said to him, how was she? You know, how was her demeanor? How did she take it? And she said, I knew I just had to get in here and you guys would help me. Right. So I find that is more the mindset is when you have that trust relationship, people come to you and they go, please help me. And we go, of course, let's fix this. So I don't find there's animosity if you have a relationship like it should be.
Right, right, Dr. Dia. Let's now move on to this business part of it. Can someone, how does this business operate? How can someone get into this business? Is it like getting into the real estate business or is it different than that?
The real estate business, I've got a lot of real estate business friends. I know that one is kind of lax to get into. And then you get people with experience over time and people who do really, really well. And then, like everything else, people who are mediocre. Getting into this business, the way you want to structure the correct med spa is number one, get a doctor. Get a doctor who is deeply emotionally involved and wants to become a good injector. And then they need to be trained to be a good injector, which is where I think I come in. And then there is a business model. I work on a system where I make the doctor the team leader. As doctors, we are very much trained in university. You stand alone. You think for yourself, you decide for yourself, you decide what happens. And if something goes wrong, you're the only one responsible. So we're very much me, myself, and I. And in this med spa industry, when I get these doctors to become part of a team, things change. They double and triple their income. The team doubles the income for the business. And you don't have an esthetician just doing her work and the injector just doing their work. They literally I create a system that feeds the business, and the staff help feed clients to the injector. And I have a very structured system we use that I use triangles as a module. And these spas make 5, 6, 7 million a year, right? First year in the six figures, second year, they start hitting into the millions. I've seen some of them do really well off the bat. But the person in a room injecting by themselves won't do badly. They will do about $1,000 an hour. Once I get that injector advanced trained with a team, they start injecting 4,500, 5,000 an hour. I can do days where I do 6 for sometimes weeks consistently. So mine hovered there between 5,000 and 6,000 an hour. And then you add the spa on top, and your physician becomes one of your best sellers. So they help sell, which keeps the rest of the spa business going, which will easily add another 1.5 to 2 million a year. And then I'm talking about a spa with 7 people, 1 injector, tiny space. So there are tough ways to do it and there are easy ways to do it. We were talking yesterday, it's literally like a 5-year-old child learning to play the piano, right? Struggle, hear it out, lots of time, versus someone playing a symphony, right? There's nothing wrong with a 5-year-old plinking around on a piano, but you can get a symphony that makes music that stops everyone.
Right, right. Well put, Dr. Dia. So, in terms of business owner, someone who wants to put in money, where is this business expanding? Is it in the US or other parts of the world? Is Help us understand what is the trend in such, because you talked about in an hour, so many patients keep on coming in. So that means a lot of people are wanting to look better. Nothing wrong with that, but where is it that is happening? Is it in the US or in other parts of the world? Are your 50 med spas only in the US or any particular location or beyond that?
You know, the 50 med spas that I was the medical director for was a few years ago when I belonged to a company with a business advisor, and I didn't own the spas, but I trained them for the businessman. And those I trained were across Canada and into America. And I would literally go in, see what they're doing. We would analyze their systems. And it's interesting to see where everyone makes the same mistakes. And also where the ones who do really well tend to do the same other things as well. But so that was Canada and America. And I would revamp it and then train them and keep mentoring them for as long as they need it. Canada and America and Europe are the big bases for the injectors. Australia is great. And I mean, the Asia is killing it. There's a lot going on in Asia. They're doing really well. This is billions and billions of dollars. It's just because it is so big, right? I think it is important to make sure it's done right, that we protect the public in the end, and not just have, every second street corner have a spa calling themselves a med spa. The client should firstly ask, who's your doctor, right? If someone calls themselves a med spa, because that will tell the client you're in a safer place. At least there's a doctor involved. But money-wise, the whole world, it is everywhere. And I mean, I'm watching India, I'm watching your country, and it is taking off there like crazy. It's fantastic.
Right, right. There is much to learn about this business. There is much to learn about all these procedures and things. And whoever decides, it is up to them. For those people who would want to learn more about the business part, more about the injection part, and more about exactly how you do things, get your help. What is the best way for them to connect with you, Dr. Dia?
Jay, LinkedIn is a really good way. It's just Dr. Dia Burger, or even if you just put my names in, and I check that all the time. I also have stiletto medspa at gmail.com, as well as $1,000,000spa@gmail.com. So any of those, we monitor them. And yeah, I'd love to talk to people, and there's no fee. I like to initially just talk to someone and see what they do, where they need help. Is it possible to advise a little bit?
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much, Ajay. I had a great time.